Do you know where you're going to go when you die? Are you ready to meet your maker? Okay. Have you realized that, there's judgment day awaiting us sinners, and only those who repent and believe in Jesus Christ will escape God's wrath and justice? You just did. I didn't say 100%. Right? Well, the Bible makes it very clear we can know that we have eternal life. And we can know that is if we have repented, okay, which means we have a radical change of mind about who God is and who we are, meaning that God is entirely perfect, just, and righteous. We are not, and we are guilty before Him. And on Judgment Day, we will not escape His justice and His wrath. And only by recognizing our doom that is inevitable can we then turn and place our faith in Jesus Christ, which is the only way that we can escape that doom. Okay. And we can know. So when people start talking about knowing absolutely or 100%, okay, this is a false idea because um, only God, I'm going to answer you. Okay. So only God is omniscient. Okay. We're not omniscient. So we cannot know precisely and robustly the way God does. But we can know some things in a certain way that we cannot be wrong if God purposes that we know certain things according to his plan. And so God has said that we can know that we have eternal life. Now,
Okay.
at this juncture, I want to explain what we're talking about knowing, okay? Knowing is a subset of belief or a mental state where you have a positive attitude toward a proposition. So we use the word know as a stronger term rather than belief. Okay. So in knowing, in philosophy, they call that a justified true belief. But rarely will anyone believe a proposition for which they knowingly and admittedly think that they have no warrant or justification for. Okay. So the difference between knowledge and belief in human thinking and discourse is that we reserve the word knowledge for the kind of belief for which we have greater warrant and justification for rather than lesser. Okay? And so it's an important distinction, but sometimes that distinction is exaggerated. Okay? So we can know, according to God's purpose and plan, certain things that He ordained that we can know. We won't know it like He does in terms of complete omniscience, but we know it in a way where we have adequate and sufficient justification or warrant where we can't be wrong. But we don't know it in the sense that we're omniscient. Okay. And so here's the point. The Christian worldview is a package deal. Okay. And so everything is tied together within the Christian worldview, which is recorded in the Bible. So, if in the case that we can come to know that the Christian worldview, represented as the composite scriptures, if we can know by virtue of its contents that it is true, then consequently we can know we have eternal life. Okay. And you can know that the Christian world is true because the Christian worldview is the only possible worldview that can ground human reason, truth, and intelligibility. And those who reject the Christian worldview are not going to have a model of reality or a worldview that they can ground. It's an impossible task. So the Christian worldview, because of its composite nature in revealing God's character, his properties, his attributes, are such that God's character and the world that he's created are exclusive, meaning no other worldview can have that character or property set. And number two, that model of reality presented in the Bible is indispensable. In other words, you cannot do without it. Because if you claim that the Christian worldview is dispensable, then you're going to be left with a worldview that has no ultimate foundation or basis to assert anything. So that's how we can know with a kind of human certainty that the Christian worldview is true is because it alone has the characteristics that can ground truth, reason, and intelligibility, and no other worldview can.
Hmm.
And down deep, people who become acquainted with the Christian worldview, they know it's true, but they would rather believe some other model of reality, even including a prevailing dominant religion, with, let's say, within their culture or nationality, rather than believe in the person of Jesus Christ. Because
Yeah, it's sad.
believing in Jesus Christ means that you have to repent of your own belief in your own autonomy.
Yeah, you have to reject your identity and put your identity into Christ.
Yeah, this is this is
And
this is
the
why
ego
so
doesn't
many
want that.
this is why so many of the atheists on Discord and YouTube, they hate me because I speak in such absolute terms.
No,
You
you
know,
don't let them speak.
well, well, actually, I do let people speak, but when people start acting like idiots, then I interrupt them.
Yeah, you act like a kid. You interrupt. You
Okay,
don't
yeah,
answer.
listen. Do you want to go on my no talk list? Do you think I haven't encountered your type of adolescent taunting before?
Are you gonna hear what I have to say, or are you gonna
I've
interrupt
already
me?
heard what you have to say, and you've already displayed an adolescent mentality. I
Well,
take
don't
no
talk to me.
delight or pleasure in criticizing you or other people who are acting like jerks. Okay,
Are you gonna listen to what I have to say, or are you gonna
I,
interrupt
I
me?
I have I already listened to what you have to say, and you've already displayed that you segued on to being an obnoxious little teenager. So I have no longer any interest in speaking with you unless you want to acknowledge that you were responding in an inappropriate way.
When you judge someone, you judge yourself. You
Yeah, well,
interrupted me.
first of all, take the wet washcloth off your microphone. Okay, if you
Nope,
if
I
you're
will
gonna
not.
if you're gonna talk on a platform where audio quality is important, it helps when it doesn't sound like you're talking through a wet washcloth.
True.
Okay, sir. Okay.
I'm willing to give you another chance, but you better up your adult game because I want to tell you, I have a reputation. I don't put up with teenage antics, even if somebody's 40, 50, or 60.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not gonna
Dard, do
deal
you
with
consider
teenagers
yourself
who
to be a
interrupt me.
Hey Dard, do you consider yourself to be a mature person?
Do I consider myself to be a mature person? Yes.
Really? You think over talking people, like screaming at them, swearing at them is like a mature thing to do?
I
Like,
think it
genuine
I think
question.
it I think at times it's appropriate, yes.
Yeah, obviously, Seraphim, that there's certain times where you can act
And
that way.
by the way, how much of my content have you actually listened to?
Well, I've been listening to you for a while. Like I've been like listening to you like since the Reformation server.
Okay. So the problem is that unless you use a variety of counts, I haven't seen your name
Yeah, he
the
does. He changed
vast
his name.
majority of time. Okay. Well, the bottom line is, um, when I display anger, it's because the other person is out of line. Okay, it's that simple.
Well, and we all have moments of weakness too. So I mean, we can't. We're not perfect, all of us. So
Well, first of all, there are a number of people that you may not be acquainted with that I have a long prior history with. So, from your perspective, it may seem to you like I'm having a short fuse with them when I'll speak with some of these individuals, even knowing they have a prior history, and then when they start trolling, then I no longer have long patience. Okay,
yeah, no, I
look,
understand.
you
Well,
you have
maybe
to
I
you
might be
have to
wrong, but
understand Seraphim. I'm not some teenager on Discord. I'm a 61-year-old man. Most of the people that I deal with are either young enough to be my children or grandchildren. And when these people cross the line and start acting like idiots, they're going to get a verbal barrage from me. And if you think that's immature, so be it.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
care.
You act like a
Yeah,
dog,
I
get treated
don't.
like a dog.
Yeah, I don't care. Okay. Now, if other than you just going, oh, do you think you're mature? If you have some substantive criticism, even though I may disagree with it, make it. But if you want to play these little childish games because you don't like my demeanor or how I conduct myself, then too bad.
GG.
Okay, here I'll make my criticism. I think you should convert to the Orthodox Church.
Oh, come on, Seraphim. You're not
Oh, it's
even a
you.
real.
Oh, it's you. Okay, it's you again.
He's
Okay,
not.
we're
He's a
done.
genuine Orthodox. That's not. They're
All right, I'm gonna
heretics.
turn him down. Yeah, he's an idiot.
Yeah,
Okay,
they're
turn him down.
schismatic. They're basically
Uh,
like sede vacantist of the
Yeah, yeah.
of
I
the
have a little
Orthodox.
teenage. I have a little teenage child telling me that people who practice, sacramentalism is that I need to join that cult. Yeah, right.
All right, calm down.
See, this is what I mean by Darth lacks of maturity. Whenever you like
Yeah,
start
I
a grown
can't hear you
No,
if you're
even
speaking to me. I
towards
have you
youth.
turned down. Okay.
He's just saying like you
Okay,
just saying
I
you
didn't
don't.
that's
ask you
fine.
to. I didn't ask you to repeat it. I have him
My
turned
bad.
down. So clearly
Yeah,
he had an axe
it's
to
good.
grind to begin with. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'll put a note in
Oh
his
yeah,
count
yeah,
not to talk with him again.
Seraphim, come on, man.
yeah.
Why do you gotta act like that?
No. All I'm saying is like Darth tried to act as a mature person, but whenever he has a disagreement and he sees that somebody makes a valid point over them, he just starts speaking over them or muting them. That's just what Darth does. I mean,
No,
I've been
it's
listening to this guy for like 3 to 4 years, and that's what he does. He speaks to people when the atheists or any other people bring a good point. He will just
okay.
like
I'm going to
derail the
move to the
convo and mute
atheist
Oh,
him.
helpline
Bye
interesting.
bye,
if the rest of
buddy.
you want
All
to
right.
join me
See,
down
that's what he
there.
does. Bye bye, buddy.
Yeah, that guy that you muted is just talking about you, how you're
He's just
false and stuff. Just yeah.
he's a teenage cultist, and they tend to be arrogant.
Yeah, just I don't know. It makes me upset that he had to bring orthodoxy into it to make you like angry at orthodoxy, but he doesn't
Well,
even represent orthodoxy.
it just goes to show you that this was completely off topic.
Yeah, it had
Okay,
nothing to do
and
with
he
anything.
had
It was
it.
just
Yeah,
stupid.
he had an agenda, right?
Darth, before you get started, were you able to set up your room mods last night?
They worked, but they said they had to do some
I asked you to try it again and
coding.
I realized the bot was down afterwards. Would you
Yeah.
like to go ahead and do that?
All right, let me just see here.
Wow, that's boring as fuck. You ain't even wrong.
Okay, so it's /lock. Is it space at the username or
When you finish lock, go ahead and hit tab. It's not
okay?
working now. Well, well, maybe it'll work for you. I can't do it in this channel. I'm not the room owner.
Darth, real quick, that was something I never thought about before. When
Oh,
people,
hold on a second. I have to do it in the right text chat. Okay, let's see.
interesting fucking points were made, man. That was cool.
Yeah, Darth does get you to think.
Yeah, he said my buddy and I were going at it on Saturday night because we're gonna start like a little podcast or whatever it may be, whatever it turns into. It turns into hopefully one of my friends gonna bring followers over. But regardless, God never promised us heaven, but He did promise us eternal life. I didn't really think about it like that, and that's a major
Well,
critique a lot of
you got to
people.
remember, I deal with an inordinate number of trolls.
Wait, so that's interesting.
And even some of the professional atheists that I've encountered, they too troll. Okay, when they get cornered by their own words, then and they realize that their obfuscation and their verbal misdirection isn't going to work, then they start trolling.
when in doubt, troll it out. That's their motto.
So at what point is were Catholics told to practice sacraments? Like, where does that come from? What's the whole belief behind that in Catholicism?
Well, in the fourth century, when Constantine was the emperor, he declared Christianity would be the state religion. And so what you had then was a flooding in of pagans with a lot of their ideas, ideology, um, and they just found Christian labels for certain things, right? So in paganism always teaches some type of works salvation. So we shouldn't be surprised that those who brought in pagan ideas would also try to smuggle in a works salvation or works gospel. And this is what we find in many churches, including the Church of Rome, the Eastern Orthodox Church. So sacramentalism, or as I used to call it, sacerdotalism, the actual correct pronunciation is sacerdotalism. Um, it's just simply a cult teaching that took over that you have to perform the sacraments in order to incrementally acquire grace that leads unto salvation. Well, that's not the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I mean, do Orthodox people really consider and hold Paul and all the apostles to the title of a god? Is that
No.
No, but what you have in the Church of Rome and Eastern Orthodoxy is the notion of deification, which was borrowed from Greek and Roman ideology, right? And that was brought into and then Christianized. That's where we get the concept of the saints, if you will, praying to the saints, things like that, and that one can become a saint. That's just the ancient Roman and Greek paganization of the concept of what we call deification, right? That's why, like for example, in Eastern Orthodoxy, they distinguish between the essence and the energies of God.
okay?
If you want to read something really good on it, it's called "Is Eastern Orthodoxy Christian" by the late Doctor. What was his name? I can see his face in my head. Robert Morey. If
Robert
you want to,
Free?
yeah, Robert Morey. If you want a copy of that book, just send me a DM asking for the book, and I'll send it to you in about an hour. Okay, it's a
Excellent.
Yeah, it's not a long book. It's an easy read, but he gives a brief history of Eastern Orthodoxy. There's also another book that goes into detail on Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy called High Church Heresy. Okay, and
High Church Heresy.
High Church Heresy. If you want to read that, I can send you a link to a digital copy. But if you like it, then you should buy the book. It's called High Church Heresy. It was written about a year or so ago.
I'm gonna send you both book titles, just to throw the DM in there. Thank you, because
Okay, I'll send you to a link, and I'll give you the instructions for it. High Church Heresy is a bit longer than is Eastern Orthodoxy Christian by Dr. Morey. That's a little easier read, but that's more focused on Eastern Orthodoxy than Catholicism. But in the link that I'll send you, it's a link that has a plethora of resources critiquing the various cults that are out there. Okay.
can I?
Hey, what's up, Darth? What's up, Darth?
Bard,
What?
don't you like how that slime Tom Rabbit is trying to, you know, uh, put a wedge between you and me, you know?
He's trying so hard. It started to become pathetic because then I was saying to myself, like, this is their goal in speaking to me.
Yeah,
It's not
I
like
know.
they really want to
Yeah,
talk to me.
yeah.
So I was like,
And you
you know
see,
what? I'm
I
out.
want to strike. Yeah, I want to strike a balance, even when I draw a line in the sand. Okay,
Oh
because
yeah.
on the one hand, I want to remain consistent, but on the other hand, I want to try as much as possible not to alienate myself by somebody who's operating in good faith. Nor do I want to be demanding, like of you, saying, "Oh, you can't speak to so and so." And so I did have you initially blocked, and then we talked about it or whatever. I don't even remember if we fully resolved it, but it just goes to show you what a creepy low life human being that he is. This is what he spends his time doing and posting on YouTube.
Well, Well, that's just what I mean. So because you see, they always wanted to be around me. So they constantly, anywhere I was, let's just say I was in another room, they would, once Godless Girl comes in the room, or Tom Rabbit, or any of these people, they automatically make them mods. So it looks like I'm on their stage. So that's all
Yeah,
you
I
see.
know, I know, I know. And it
You know,
look,
and it gets to the point where it's just like, oh my God, these people are so pathetic.
oh, I know. Well, look, it's the interweb. What should we expect? It's like the Democratic Party. It's filled with slime and filth
I have
and
so many
perverted
friends on this
people.
app, though. I have so many friends on this app. Like, it was nice getting to know them, but they'll make it back to Discord eventually. That's why I do like, though I do really like how it sounds. That app sounds amazing. But
Which
you know
which
what?
which 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 app?
The Clubhouse.
Well, yeah, it has its strengths and weaknesses. Just like this
Yeah,
does.
I like this only because of the interface with the we could watch videos like now with this new
Right.
update as like it's really user friendly. I love it.
I don't like one better than the other. Not to be redundant, but I just understand they both have their strengths and weaknesses. I really don't care for the mobile app for Discord. Maybe that's just because I'm accustomed to the desktop app, things like that. Anyway, I see we
So
have a lot of people in the room. I
oh
just let me just say one quick thing. If there's anybody who is an unbeliever, atheist, agnostic, or you object to Christianity and you'd like to discuss it or make a case for your unbelief, you're free to speak. Go ahead, Bart.
If Bart's not gonna go, and I'd like to just ask a question.
Yeah, can you get closer to your microphone?
Is this better?
Yeah.
What are your critiques of Calvinism?
I have a lot of respect for Calvinist theologians for their brilliance and their expertise, but I fundamentally disagree with the certain distinctives within Calvinism. Right? I believe in the concept of total depravity, but not the way it is articulated in Calvinism, where total depravity results in a complete total inability of a sinner during their lifetime to turn and repent toward God and have faith in Christ, unless, according to Calvinism, they're irresistibly drawn. I don't believe that the Bible unequivocally teaches that.
Okay.
But I have many friends that are Calvinists. I get along with Calvinists, right? I think the difference is that they've adopted certain semantic ranges, and then they have used that as a filter to interpret other verses.
Understood.
so
That's
Darth,
actually
I
a,
was watching this. I was watching. Oh, I'm sorry. Who was that? Grug?
I was just gonna add real quick that point about semantic ranges is like if you're like new to in-depth biblical study, it's a very you should note it because you can get into a lot of trouble when you do that if you start looking at the Greek and say like this word if you limit the semantic range of words either in the English or in the Greek, then you can come to faulty conclusions and it's a challenge to make sure that you're not doing that. You have to always examine that you're not doing that.
Yeah, it's like there are certain verses that could semantically uh, mean what the Calvinists say it is. It's not like they're Looney Tunes, but it also has a semantic range where it could mean something that is somewhat different, right? And so, like for example, the classic verses in John 6, no man can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him. Semantically, it could mean irresistible grace. But when you
You're
look at the
gay.
context, it's not necessitated and it can mean a different concept. Okay. But you see, what the Calvinists do is they take their various verses with their semantic range and they just use that as a filter. And they will accuse me and other non Calvinists of doing the same thing. And that's the issue.
Understood.
But the
So
good thing is we're all believers, Calvinists and non Calvinists. that is, like on Discord, and we're presenting the same gospel, calling everyone to give up their false beliefs about themselves, their false beliefs about God, in the hope. They love their rebellion more than they want to be right with God.
What a personal question. What sent you on this, like your entire plight for defending Christianity? Because you seem very well. I mean, we've always known you're very well versed in it. Did you like what made you say, you know what, because like I'm
Well,
going to study so much?
the moment you become a Christian, as I did, you immediately are acquainted to one degree or another that there are false representations of Christianity all over the place. Like, for example, even in my local community, where the town that I lived in, the churches I knew right then and there, most of them, except for a small number, were not Bible believing churches, right? And so, inevitably, when you talk with people about the Bible and about God, inevitably these religious kinds of conversations come up, because they all can't be correct if they disagree with each other. Somebody's wrong. And I think truth matters. That's why like, for example, the issue between evolution and creationism, they both can't be correct. Somebody's wrong.
Understood.
Look, when I was a kid, I used to love watching documentaries on TV. We didn't have cable TV then; it didn't exist. Um, but I remember watching some of these documentaries, like on Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster or the JFK assassination, and it just used to really pique my curiosity that these conflicting accounts can't all be true, right? Either they're all wrong or one of them is right and the rest of them are false, and I would want to know what is the truth. And so that's a part of the mindset that I had when it came to Christianity. Either Christianity is absolutely true, to use a certain phraseology, or it's one of the biggest scams in all of human history. Same thing with evolution. Either evolution is true or it's a big scam, just like global warming.
Understood.
So, Darth, I watched this video. You know who Graham Hancock is, right?
No, I haven't heard that name.
Graham Hancock is this Egyptologist that talks about the ancient civilizations, and he really goes into trying to connect lots of different things. He has interesting concepts, not and many of them are proven. He just kind of presents them and he gives kind of his narrative, right? He interviewed this guy in his house. Now this man he basically translated over 70 books from the Masoretic text to Italian for the Vatican, right? And in his clause, he had to define every word. And then there was two words that he could not define because he says there is no meaning. There is no definitive meaning for it. One was Elohim, and the other one was El Shaddai, right? Almighty. But they're saying that there's so the reason why he said Elohim, because he feels like Elohim was a word from a different language or culture that was adopted, and the word wasn't changed. But the word's meaning has different meaning in different texts with how they're using the word, right? And when he boiled down to it, they were saying that most of the way they used the word was for either a group of people, a hierarchy group, or some sort of like oligarchy group. Have you ever heard of this before? I'm gonna post a link in the chat of
No,
the.
no, I haven't.
I'm gonna post what is this? Atheist Helpline. It's just I'll put it in there.
Isn't amazing? I show up on a new server, and then the trolls start slowly showing
Oh
up.
yeah.
We just had JL Warren, that sexual pervert, show up. So I very quickly locked him out. He'll have to show up in it with another account. Yeah, they're obsessed with me.
I mean, I think some of them do want to listen to you, but I know it's annoying just to see them in the room. I know the feeling.
I mean, I had a good laugh when J.L. Warren, being very cocky and arrogant, stated that William Lane Craig was one of the greatest presenters or promoters of presuppositionalism. I mean, and this was 100% false. He's a critic of biblical presuppositionalism.
Do you remember when we first listened to that video when it first came out? When J.L.
Yeah,
Warren first did the first
yeah,
video, and
yeah,
this was back in the Reformation server, and it
right.
was like I think it was like 9, 10 o'clock. Oh my God, that was hysterical! Like
That
I
was
was
we had a
laughing
good
my
laugh.
ass off.
We
Oh my
did.
God.
We had a good laugh. And the fact that Parakeet has asked me to do video critiques, and I said I'm going to be doing them shortly. People really love the when we go through videos because we can find such few intelligent, mature-minded atheists to deal with that this is what we're left doing, that we have to do video critiques.
Remember when he heard you cursing the one time and you just kept rewinding it and it kept going over and over again? It was so funny.
Oh my gosh. That's all they're left with is, oh, Darth Dawkins is an awful person. Look, it's because they can't defend their atheism, and that's all they've got is to throw mud.
I think the best thing in regards. Well, let's talk about making the best out of a bad situation. Nobody likes to be trolled, but whoever put together that Darth Dawkins Christmas video, they had a
Oh,
lot.
of course that's funny.
It's great. It's gold, man. And all
I
did was
I listen, I got to tell you a funny story. I had a relative who listened to that, and they were laughing, and they said, that was really funny what you did. And I said that wasn't me. And they were like, what? I said, somebody very cleverly using audio software took recordings of me and manipulated it to make it sound like I was singing. And then they produced, a kind of a parody of me. And the relatives were laughing and they said, oh, I thought you actually did that. And I said, no.
Did you ever get to the bottom of who that was? I think last time we spoke, you weren't sure.
Oh, no, no. We know who did it. I forget what the guy's name is. I can't tell you off the top
Was
of
it
my head.
Penis Suit?
Yeah, it was him. Yeah, that's who
Yeah.
it was. Yeah.
So did he do it to troll you and make you mad, or he did it because like he
No,
literally?
I don't think that
You know
made
what?
any.
I've dealt with him before. I would just call him on a very mild, on the spectrum of trolling. Mildly doing that. I think he did it more for, lulls and to make his fellow atheist compatriots laugh. You know.
Well, it was done cleverly. Is there any atheists that you disagree with, but you both stay civil and you would consider them like a pleasure to talk to?
I occasionally, or I should say rarely, encountered some mature-minded atheists, but it's few and far between. Just look at the verbal interactions I had with about 8 atheists with PhDs and AMAs that you can find on there. All of them wanted to get rid of me as fast as they could, and you can't fault me for my conduct. I didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't rude with these people, right? It's because their usual atheist shtick, even as professional atheists with PhDs, doesn't work.
Yeah.
Once you have a basic, proper understanding of the biblical worldview, then anything, even a highly intelligent, even highly educated atheist says, turns into a farce. They can't defend it. That's why Romans 1 says they are without a defense. There is no defense for their not Godism. Okay?
Right,
What do you mean by that?
Dawkins, quick question. How do you explain difference in races and why? Thank you.
Well, within the genetic pool, if you will, not just humans, but other, there's a variety of coding information, and through successive generations and reproduction, where are you familiar with Mendelian genetics?
Yes.
Okay, through a combination of Mendelian genetics and other factors, what we see are certain traits become dominant. Okay, you have certain traits both in the human and the animal kingdom that are recessive, some are dominant, and some become dormant. Okay, so I think that within the animal kingdom DNA and even human DNA, there are certain traits that they're not within the DNA coding are not entirely expressed. Okay, and so through successive reproduction, you have certain traits that become dominant, okay, or can even emerge like in the animal kingdom. So that's why it wasn't necessary for Noah to bring a certain number of animals on the ark, right? Like for example, within the bear kind, he wouldn't need to bring every kind of bear that's on the planet today. All he would have to bring is a small number of bears, and inherent within the genetic pool, you would have this. After the flood and reproduction, you would have certain traits arising where you have grizzlies versus polar bears, things like that. So that's why we have different races.
Okay, but
Just
explain to me. Explain to me, okay? Something. Let's say you believe that Noah's Ark. I think it was like 6 or 7 people on it, right? And those were like the last people, the only people at one point.
Yes.
Okay. So from this population, how did you get Europeans, Chinese people, and Africans?
When they landed,
Well, first of all.
Also, give me the timeline, how far back that was.
Well, I couldn't give you a precise number, but the point is this, is that it doesn't take long for certain traits to pop up in successive generations, and then through successive, reproduction, it becomes dominant. I mean, it's not really a big problem for creationism. By the way, what are you?
More of a spiritualist, I guess. I don't know. I'm still searching for a religion.
Okay.
I was born a Catholic, though.
Okay. So, are you asking that the concept of creationism versus evolution?
Yeah, like I've talked to
Okay.
Mr. Batman. Do you know him?
Yeah, I know that crackpot. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, he was like telling me that two white people can actually give birth to like a black baby, and reverse is also true.
Well, do you know that there was a black couple that they gave birth to a white baby?
Come on,
That's the
man.
thing. I've heard.
Hold on a second. You don't believe
from
me?
Mr. Batman.
Hold on a second. Yeah.
I don't think that's true. Yes, I don't think that's true.
It's true.
Mm-hmm. Can you?
Okay, and the reason why is why? Because there were the genes for whiteness in both of their lineages, but it was highly unlikely, given genetics, that those two genes coinciding together when they mated, that they would produce it.
So what you're referring to, right?
What we're talking about is genetic information. It's highly unlikely.
Cool. My thing is that we have never seen it ever before, right? Mr. Batman gave me the same.
What? You've never seen what?
We've never seen two black people give birth to white.
Sir, look at the picture that was just posted in the Atheist Helpline. Okay.
1 second.
Okay.
Atheist Helpline.
It's because both of them had some white genes generations ago, and just because of a rare occurrence. Okay.
Yeah,
no, but
so
you have to understand.
This baby isn't a European. This baby is an albino. That's the difference. Do you know the difference between albino and a European?
That's not an albino.
That's an albino. That's
No.
what I was about just to tell you.
No, sir, listen to me. When I read about that case, okay, the baby was not an albino. Now, if you want to show me, if you want to, because I read about the case at the time. If you want to go, it's posted there. Like, if you want to go back to to that case, and you want to show me that they said, "Oh yeah, this is an albino," I'll be glad to change my tune. I'll be glad to be corrected. But this was an extremely rare genetic occurrence. Okay, it's not the baby's not an albino.
Where does it
very
say that, by the way? Does it say that does it say that the baby has European?
No,
like,
what they found out is that they both had whiteness in their background. The point is this: the idea of whiteness or blackness, or having certain Asian features, is nothing that is difficult to understand from a creationist perspective. These are just dominant features that arise through successive reproduction. It's no biggie. It's not a problem for creationism.
Fine. I'm only questioning the Europeanness of the baby. I'm saying it's an albino, not a European.
No, it's not an albino, my friend. I didn't say the baby was European. That's a ridiculous notion.
So by European, I mean white, right? That's what I'm talking about. Like, but not just pigment-wise. I'm talking about facial features.
Well, not to nitpick here, but what you should say is Caucasian. Okay.
I mean, that's even a more broad term, but okay, yeah, sure. Caucasian, fine. Let's go with Caucasian.
Well, the problem, look.
Did two sub-Saharan Africans give birth to a Caucasian baby?
The problem is you've probably been indoctrinated by the theory of evolution. And then once you hear of a differing idea about creationism, that you think it's stumped. Evolution has vastly more problems scientifically than creationism does, my friend. But you haven't been educated on them. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You think that the diversity that we see within the animal kingdom, even within certain kinds of animals and even human beings, is best explained by evolution. It is not. Evolution is a pathetic scientific theory, but it's the prevailing theory and consensus.
Okay, but why do you think it's wrong?
Why? Well, we can go into that. Okay, but the theory of evolution. Why do you keep on over talking me when I'm answering you?
Because you do the same thing with me.
Okay, have a nice day, sir. You're done.
Okay, goodbye.
Yeah.
So on that
exact same thing.
On that all right, hey. On that last, that's not, no one cares. On that last article, I found a doctor, well, a journalist quoting a doctor commenting, which says that it is either, exactly as Darth Dawkins says, the dormant Caucasian DNA from both lines, or that it's its own unique genetic mutation, which, of course, that last possibility is the exact thing that Jumbo was having problems with. He's like, well, hold on a sec. How do you get a totally different race as defined by at least kind of skin tone, hair type, etc., within this short period of time between Noah and today? But it can happen once. The idea that the evolutionists say, and the atheists have to do this with the world too, they say, no, it requires time. It has to require time, and then they just jam the time thing in there.
That's the secret sauce of evolution. It requires eons of time. Hey, you know what? The other day I was in a store, and there was a man and woman, clearly husband and wife, and they were there with their children, and they happened to be very short, but their son was significantly taller than even the father. Ooh, how'd that happen?
Right.
No, people have been so brainwashed into the so-called positives of evolution, and they really haven't been rigorously educated in the severe scientific problems of evolution, right? Because of the influence of confirmation bias, right? And so, they just think creationism is just superstitious religious mumbo jumbo. That's religion and evolution is science.
Right. That's what they think.
Look, the overwhelming majority of people that I've talked with in the last 12 years about evolution, and I've asked the question, what is the number one thing that influences you to believe that evolution is true? You know what they say? They say the fossils.
Mm-hmm.
And what they don't realize is that even according to top experts in paleontology, in the upper echelon, they acknowledge that the fossil record does not support Darwinian gradualism. Okay? Most people think that the fossil record supports a Darwinian gradualism. It doesn't. It's because people have been given so many scientific sounding explanations of the bones. They confuse just so stories about the fossils for actual data. Okay.
Right. I saw a really great image the other day that had like a bunch of different species in their fossils in the fossil records that are identical. You go back, you know, you
They
go
have
back.
they have an explanation for everything.
Yep. Yep.
So
It's
do
just it's just as you say, so many
Look,
just so stories.
the dirty little secret that very few people know about is there's simply not enough time and trials, even within a grand universe, for mutations aided by natural selection to produce the genome as we now see across the spectrum of the animal kingdom. There's just not enough time and trials from a purely probabilistic standpoint, if we evaluate it probabilistically. But if you abandon probabilistic reasoning, well, then evolution will be, you can just accept it. That's why people are inconsistent when you point out the astronomical remoteness of mutations to produce the genome. They just don't care because they've already decided, well, evolution is true, therefore the astronomical remoteness doesn't matter. But you see, if we talked about any other facet of life that was astronomically remote, right, and that it was a meaningful situation, they wouldn't believe that it happened by chance. I tell people that if you had a trillion squared Earth-like planets over 13.7 billion years, it still wouldn't be enough time and trials for mutations to build the genome of the animal kingdom. Okay. And people don't believe it because they hear it from Darth Dawkins and they don't hear it in documentaries or from their school teachers or from college professors. It's not that I've discovered anything unique. It's just that if you investigate it, it's easy to figure out because we know what the probabilities are based upon the molecular sequencing. Okay. But I have no delusions that I'm going to persuade large numbers of people. Okay, because I'm convinced that the theory of evolution is a part of the last days deception. It's a part of the deception that is in rebellion against God, right? One of the number one factors that facilitates people choosing not to believe in God is the theory of evolution because it allows them to feel they have no need of God or that God is not necessary.
well, still, even if you would accept that, okay, there might be a creator, it does not make the whole thing true. By whole thing, I mean Christianity true.
I'm having trouble
Doesn't have to.
understanding you.
If someone accepts and says, okay, well, there might be a creationist, or there might be a being, okay, which created us humans, that doesn't make all the other writings like the Bible and everything true.
Well, your only option is to accept that the God of the Bible is the one true creator and that he's revealed himself in creation and history because the God of the Bible is the only God that has the attribute set in order to enable you and I to have access to truth, reason, and intelligibility. If you don't accept that, you're going to have to give me another worldview that is exclusive and indispensable, because the God of Christianity has communicated that he alone has the attribute set by which he is exclusive, and
Why
his
can't
character,
you
and let me finish, and that his
keep
character
shipping?
set, his attribute set is indispensable not only for creation, but in order for human beings to have a foundation or a basis for truth, reason, and intelligibility. So if you don't accept the representation of the God of the Bible as it represents itself as the revelation of God, then you are making a counterclaim. And if you make a counterclaim, you're going to have to defend it.
Well, you're the one who's making the extraordinary claim that this being came up and he talked with some
Okay,
Jews and
extraordinary came.
you gotta
Okay,
believe it.
so are you an
Don't
atheist?
you think it's an extraordinary claim?
Okay, yes. So are all other worldviews are extraordinary claims.
Well, not if I'm gonna say,
Can
well,
you? Okay,
what
well,
is
hold on a
wet
sec.
is not extraordinary, you know
Hold
that.
on a
Not
second.
hold on, bro. You talk over me.
Listen.
Shut up.
s-
Let me finish.
Uh,
Not listen. You listen.
no,
I
we
keep listening.
we gotta slow down here.
Where
Okay.
we gotta,
Now,
yeah, we gotta slow down. But you listen
Okay,
if
too,
you're
okay?
going,
Commissar, cool
Don't
it,
talk
man.
over me.
listen to
Cool
me.
it, man.
This is my
Fucking
room. Okay.
retard. Shut up, you fucking
Okay.
nigger.
Okay.
All
Like
right.
I talk to
All
you.
right.
Okay. All
You're
right.
Why can't I
done.
listen?
All right. You're
All
done.
right.
Okay. He
That's it.
blew it.
You
Okay.
can't say that in here, man.
I'm trying to get him to slow down instead of him just, you know, running off at the mouth.
We
I want to
disavow
go
that
point
on
by
this channel,
point through
folks.
what he's saying.
I don't
Okay.
support that. We disavow that.
Now he says it's an extraordinary claim. Yeah, you're correct, but so is every other worldview an extraordinary claim. Okay.
Right. And now he's dumping memes in the text chat.
So what he's saying, what you see, this is a false belief that he has. He probably picked it up from watching YouTube videos, you know, like Christopher Hitchens, the late atheist, where he says extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. This is just kind of half-baked propaganda. And what I mean by that is that they want to just say, well, it's extraordinary, and yet the Christian worldview, as I understand it, doesn't persuade me, as though what they're believing is not extraordinary. And in
Right,
fact, I
like in
could
the
show,
infinite universe or
yeah.
yeah.
So I could show, if we had, let's say, a chart in front of us, and we had the attributes of the Christian worldview, the characteristics of the Christian worldview on one side, and whatever his worldview is, we could list its characteristics and attribute. I could show you point by point how it individually and collectively is an extraordinary claim. So when they say that it's an extraordinary claim, they're implying that the worldview that he's operating from is not extraordinary. It's a kind of special pleading. It's, in other words, it's a covert way of saying is, well, I'm believing in an ordinary worldview. The Christian worldview is extraordinary. Therefore, it's suspect until you provide extraordinary support for your extraordinary claim. But I'm going to believe in this ordinary worldview. Well, that's inherent in what he was saying. Okay. And if we would get him back in here, okay, he would have to admit, right? So did you kick him or what?
No, I didn't kick him.
Okay. So if he comes back in here, I'll unmute him and I will just simply ask him a simple question. Is your world not Christian worldview? Is it extraordinary or not extraordinary?
Mm-hmm.
Either way he answers the question, he's in deep trouble. Okay.
I'm gonna try to get him back in here when he's free.
If he says that his worldview is extraordinary or extraordinary, then how is it pejorative or a negative to say the Christian worldview is extraordinary? Okay. On the other hand, if he says his worldview is not extraordinary, then his worldview is just ordinary. Oh, okay. So give me your worldview and explain to me how it's not extraordinary. because any worldview is going to have a model of reality. It's going to have a grounding. It's going to have a metaphysic and what is central or fundamental to it. And whatever is fundamental to one's worldview will fit within the category of that which is extraordinary. So this is a kind of a quasi false claim that Christianity is extraordinary while his worldview is not extraordinary.
Whatever is extraordinary would be like his opinion too. So like why are we like subject to that, you know?
No, it's a false critique that he's making. Okay.
What
I
are some
mean,
of the other extraordinary aspects of the worldview? I guess I can just think of like,
well,
you know,
just hold that thought for a second. So
mhm.
it's not that I'm saying that the Christian worldview is not extraordinary. Okay. But all worldviews are extraordinary because you're dealing with a complete picture, if you will, of reality. So show me your model of reality that's just ordinary. What is it? And then explain to me how it's not extraordinary. So, like, for example, suppose somebody adopts naturalism. Okay. How is that not extraordinary? How is it asserting that all temporal states don't ultimately derive from a mind God? Okay. How is that an ordinary claim? Okay. So it's a false representation that the Christian worldview is something that is an exaggerated claim that needs an exaggerated defense, whereas the worldview that he's operating from doesn't require a defense. That it's just run of the mill. It's ordinary. It's kind of like, suppose I told you that today I walked on water. You would say that's extraordinary. Whereas you might be saying, well, I walked down the sidewalk. Well, that's an ordinary claim. What he's attempting to do is just say, well, I'm holding to an ordinary view, which is the not Christian worldview, but the Christian worldview is extraordinary, and you haven't presented extraordinary support for your extraordinary claim, whereas I'm holding to an ordinary worldview. Yeah, hardly.
Yeah, they try to smuggle in some sort of like default. Like there's a default understanding of the world.
Exactly.
And
Like
that
they'll talk
default
it, right.
that default also includes like an understanding of things that supposedly happened like millions of years ago without observing them.
Yeah.
It's
Or
wild.
one of the ways they try to smuggle in naturalism or materialism is to give us this dichotomy that the Christian worldview or the God worldview is presenting a supernatural claim rather than just natural claims, right? And it's very clever, okay? But when I began to analyze it and look at it, I realized that they're just smuggling in naturalism, right? When they talk about, well, natural things. Well,
Well,
how is it the case that all these quote natural things exist with independence from God? Where'd you get that from? Their position is not the fault, but they want to pretend like it is. Even Graham Oppy tried to foist that on me when he tried to give a defense of his atheism.
I don't understand how like anyone like what is a default position? Like how would like what is that even? Like
Well,
no.
their line of reasoning goes like this. Well, you're the one presenting God, and God is a claim of the supernatural, right? Now, who would deny that God is in the supernatural realm, right? But at the same time, their claim is a universal claim that everything is natural, right? Or without reference to God, right? They're trying to make their position the one that's ordinary, whereas the supernatural one is extraordinary, as I said before. Okay.
There's no such thing as like a default position though, right? Like your position.
You have to remember that the facts aren't always quote the facts. It's how the facts are invoked and presented. So that's why whenever somebody tries to make the dichotomy between the natural world and somebody invoking the supernatural, and that we all agree that there's a natural world but not a supernatural world, they're smuggling in atheism. Okay, they're smuggling in the not God world as the default, but they're not going to be transparent about it. In other words, there's an array of facts in the natural world that exist without the necessity of referencing God. And then they say, you're presenting now God as supernatural here. All they're simply doing is when they make that distinguishing between the natural world and the supernatural, and that you need to make a case for the supernatural, whereas the natural is given, they're just smuggling in atheism and not calling it atheism.
So how do we respond to atheists when they say that, oh, it's just simply the case that only the natural exists? It's just
Okay.
necessary. How do we respond to that?
Okay, so what you need to do is you need to recapitulate what is being said in a way that's more accurate, that evades their misrepresentation. So what you need to say is there's two possible worlds. There's the God world and the not God world. Now, they are going to be very reluctant to accept this type of dichotomization because it really exposes that they're not in the default position. Okay. So we have the God world and the not God world, right? And so the God world is a type of universal declaration in that God is singular, ultimate, and the source and basis of all temporal states, right? And so
Right.
all things that are not God derive and depend upon God, both chronologically and contemporarily. They hold out that their view is the ordinary one of just natural things, but they're smuggling in covertly naturalism or atheism in that all of these temporal states or natural objects are just as is. Okay, they're just a given without the necessity of invoking or referencing the necessity of God. But that too is a universal declaration, but it's clandestine. Whereas when we invoke God, it's not covert, it's overt in terms of that universal declaration. So both positions are universal declarations, but they would have you believe, and they've convinced themselves, right, that their universal declaration is just a given. It's a default position, whereas your universal declaration is new and unique and novel, and you have to make a case for this novel presentation of this universal declaration, whereas their natural world is not novel and it's just a given. Well, that's a false belief. Okay. So both the God world and the not God world are both universal dictums. They're both universal declarations. And so not accepting the presenting of the God world doesn't ipso facto get you to the not God world. But that's how they think. That the not God world wins ipso facto is if you fail to their satisfaction to persuade them that the God world is true. Okay? But that would be an appeal to ignorance fallacy. And when this is brought to their attention, most of them are blindsided. And that's when they would very quickly start going to bickering and obfuscating and being unruly. Okay? Not
They seem
being, yeah, go ahead.
they like have a higher standard of evidence for the God world than the not God world, and
That's
that's like
correct. They violate their own criterion of belief that they use to dismiss the God world, and they abandon that criterion of belief when they accept the not God world. But they don't express it in those terms. The way I expressed it makes it very clear cut philosophically what is going on. Okay. And they don't like it. Okay. It's kind of like this. They want to represent their not godism in the same way some dude is dressed up like a woman, and yet he's exposed to having the family jewels between the legs, right? He's not a woman, right? Look, there was a guy who just participated, I read about, in some chess competition for women. And they kicked him out after they found out he was just dressed up as a woman. He was not as he represented himself to be. Well, atheists and agnostics are kind of in philosophical drag. They're not representing what their position really is. Their position is every much a universal declaration metaphysically, as is theism or Christianity. But they just don't want to admit it. They want their position somehow to be just a default. Well, it's just the natural world. You're the one, their attitude is, well, you're the one who's special pleading about the supernatural entity. I'm not special pleading for a supernatural entity. Oh, yeah, you are. You're special pleading that materialism and naturalism is a given. Right? That's why the conversations tend to go nowhere, because once they run out of cliches and slogans, they don't know what else to do other than to be argumentative.
Yeah, there's a guy in here named Boris, and the other day he was telling me that like essentially atheism is the default position. And
Boris is okay. Listen carefully. Boris is a very cordial person. Okay, Boris is about my age. Boris is not stupid, but Boris is a pathological liar. Okay, I've had extensive dealings with Boris. Okay, Boris wouldn't dare make that assertion in my presence because he know I'd be all over it like a pit bull. Okay. Atheism is the default position. What a joke.
It's just the movie.
You know he made like I'm not defending that at all. I go at him about that. But you know he invented like controllers and stuff for the first video games. Very
Yeah.
popular video games.
Yeah, he's a
And they,
Boris is a
He's an
smart
engineer.
guy.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
is.
Boris
and
is
then
a
grab.
very smart guy.
But
I
like
don't
what he's doing there is it's a moving the goalpost fallacy, right? Or is it no
No,
shift
what
blame
he's doing what he's doing is
or burden shift.
he's presenting a misrepresentation of what his position is. Just like the guy competing in the chess game dressed up like a woman was misrepresenting what he really is. Okay, just like all these other transvestites who try to compete in women's sports, they're misrepresenting what they really are. So too, when atheists say that they have their position is the default, and we're the one who's making a special case. We're the ones making something a novel statement that needs novel support. Well, their position isn't. What's that?
Wouldn't that be a burden shifting fallacy? Because it's like he puts the burden on us, and like he doesn't have a
Right.
burden.
Yeah. Well, that's typically what they go to. As when you debate against atheists, once you start to learn the biblical worldview, okay, and what I mean by that is how it really applies where the rubber meets the road, right? At a philosophical level, which is it's not really that complex. And you listen to what they say and then you evaluate it, and it turns out that they're just giving you cliches. They're not really giving you substantive philosophical arguments. They will then resort to impugning you as shifting the burden of proof, as though their position was the default. Okay. This is typical. Yesterday, I was talking with a young woman and I just said, well, why are you an atheist? After she went through about 3 or 4 of the atheist cliches, and I walked her through them step by step as to why they were actually logically and philosophically fallacious. What did she do? She reached into her American atheist canvas tote bag and pulled out "You're shifting the burden of proof" routine. Okay. And I pointed at her, yeah, anyone who invokes the existence of God, especially the Christian God, we have a responsibility and a burden to make a positive case for that. But in the absence of somebody doing that to their satisfaction, atheism or naturalism does not win by default. Because if you think it does, then you're making an appeal to ignorance fallacy.
Like,
This
I don't
is
understand.
why, yeah, go ahead.
the entailments of atheism are terrible. Like, there's no life after a death. Like, what is the purpose? Like, just to have pleasure? Like, the entailments are bad. There's no practical use for atheism. I just don't understand why anyone would ever want to be an atheist. Like, there's nothing.
Well, it's very simple. It's very simple. It's not complicated. It's because they don't want to repent of their false belief that they are autonomous. They don't want God to be the creator, which means they don't want God to be autonomous. So they desperately want their autonomy, which is a false belief, to be true. They want to continue to live as though they were autonomous. And that is what is lurking behind everything they say, including those of professional atheists and professional philosophers. Okay? They have a false belief as to their own human autonomy. Okay? And don't forget that. It's a very easy concept to understand, but it's spot on accurate as to what is going on. Everything that comes out of their mouth, every thought that they think, is about preserving and protecting their false belief that they are autonomous. That's simple.
Like, they want to be self-justified rather than be justified by God or something.
Well, autonomy is the concept that they are thinking, reasoning, cognitive beings without the necessity of acknowledging God as their creator and sustainer. That's what it means for them to be autonomous, okay? As opposed to God being the eternal one who necessarily exists, is unconditionally non-dependent, non-derivative, and he alone would be autonomous as creator. So when somebody holds to the false belief that they are not creaturely, that is the same thing as believing that they are autonomous, because the only alternative to human autonomy is the autonomy of God as creator. They don't want to continue to believe or accept the autonomy of God, so they collect for themselves cliches and slogans that don't hold up upon examination, as that they think support their false belief of human autonomy. It's impossible to defend the false belief that human beings are autonomous. It's impossible. It cannot be done. They make a desperate attempt to do so, but they can't.
I like how you phrase it, like they just spit out a bunch of cliches. It's like true, like you analyze what they say, there's no like substance to it, like slogans.
Yeah, that's why most of them, when I deal with them, they quickly become flabbergasted when I point out that their unbelief is just expressed as a state of mental incredulity. In other words, that they're just innocent bystanders. They're just unconvinced. You're just making the novel claim, as opposed to a not God world is not a novel claim, that it's just an ordinary claim, whereas the God world is a novel claim and it's extraordinary. This is how they reason. Okay. This is why you will see that it's few and far between I and people like myself get to talk with mature-minded, intelligent atheists. Okay. That's why most of them, they either tend to be covert trolls or they're overt trolls. What else are they going to do? By the way, Face of Yah, good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. Once you understand the biblical worldview, what God has revealed, and that,
Hey, everybody.
yeah, that nothing that a human being can say in opposition to God can actually be sustained philosophically or metaphysically. That's why they so commonly resort to deception, because they can't actually defend the denial of what God has revealed. And the funny thing is, we would have the trolls and the stalkers and the harassers flooding in here, but they know that they're not going to get away with it. That's why they don't show up. But if they thought they could, they would show up in droves.
They try to get popular by like defeating you in a debate or something.
Yeah, I always love it where they post these videos with Darth Dawkins and they say, Darth Dawkins obliterated. I mean, they have no shame with their clickbait titles, just no shame whatsoever. They just blatantly lie.
They surround themselves in like an echo chamber because like a lot of their like ideas couldn't survive the free marketplace.
I
They had
mean,
to
if they think if they just saying this stupid crap all over again and they obfuscate, they prevaricate, and they just bicker, that's obliterating Darth Dawkins. I mean, this is how pathetic these people are. I mean, just as an example, this young female atheist that I spoke with yesterday, we went through each of her atheist cliches and I showed him how they were logically and philosophically fallacious. I mean, methodically, step by step. She reached a point where she realized she didn't have any more atheist cliches or slogans. So what did she do? She just started to be argumentative and bickered. What else was she going to do? Was she going to admit defeat?
So one of your stalkers was like trying to tell me that I think informal fallacies are not a logical fallacy. I was like, what the hell?
Well,
Because
you got to be careful about the wording of it. Okay, there's formal and informal fallacies.
yeah, but as far as I understood, they're both considered logical fallacies. Although there's like a difference. Like one is a fallacy when
Yeah, yeah.
struck.
Some are formal and some are informal.
Yeah.
I forget how. I mean, I've read about it in the past. I'm a bit rusty on it right now, so I'd have to probably go back and refresh myself about how to express it. You know,
Yeah, I'm not that great on it, but
like for example, when we make a case for the existence of God by virtue of God's revelation, they want to say that's circular reasoning, but you see, it's not a fallacious line of reasoning when it comes to the existence of God, because the only way to rationally support the existence of God is by virtue of God taking the initiative for him to reveal himself authoritatively, because there can't be another authoritative source. Okay,
well, there's
so
like
it's a category error that they're making because we're not God. Okay, when we talk about ordinary states of affairs, where circular reasoning is deemed to be a fallacy because it's considered to be arbitrary. Okay, but you see, they don't throw that accusation when it comes to the regularity of nature or the basic reliability of cognition or the basic reliability of sense perception. Notice I didn't say the perfection. Okay, you have to adopt the basic reliability of sense perception and cognition in order to even defend it.
yeah, because there's like limits to our knowledge. So when we're dealing with
Yeah,
those
right.
foundations,
That's right. There are certain principles like that because of our epistemic condition and our because we're not God, we're not omniscient, that in certain instances, spiral reasoning, they would call it circular reasoning, Van Til would call it spiral reasoning, cannot be avoided. And it's not fallacious. Now, the problem is if they were consistent, then they would just keep their mouth shut, because then there would be no final authority from out of which they could speak, because then the grounding of it would be circular. Okay. Look, these are people that are they're sophist. You know, philosophy is just a hobby, and they They dabble in philosophy because they want to use it as mental gymnastics to justify their reprobateness. Look, I have yet to hear even a highly educated atheist, even people who have degrees in philosophy, say anything more substantive than even atheist teenagers say. They're blowing smoke.
It's like they're just playing a game and they want to win the game. They don't really care about.
Really? They want to say that they can ground what is universally true in a world without God. How could you do that? They want to talk about extraordinary claims. If they're making a universal declaration from a not God world, that's an extraordinary claim. How do you support that? No, they are deeply committed. They are bitter clingers to a not God world for one reason and one reason alone. They do not want there to be a God. And I'm not trying to psychoanalyze them, like the way they psychoanalyze us, saying, "Oh, well, you want a God because you're fearful of, dying and just turning into worm food." I mean, I can show through a logical analysis that they're bitter clingers to, their autonomy because they don't want there to be a God. Because every one of their lines of reasoning turn out to be cliches and slogans, and therefore the only alternative is they're being completely and utterly arbitrary in their not Godism, or they embrace not Godism because they're trying to suppress the truth and unrighteousness. And then I'll say, well, it's either you're suppressing the truth and unrighteousness or you're being entirely arbitrary. And they'll say, well, that it's neither. I say, good, then give me a logical, rational defense of the not God world. Give it to me. 12 years, I've yet to hear it.
Yeah, me too.
This is why I was not intimidated in the least when I, got an opportunity to question some of these professional atheists. Not because I think I'm smarter than them. I don't think I'm smarter or educated. It's because I know the truth of what God has revealed. I know ahead of time that it cannot be defeated by human reason. And so whatever they do invoke as an explanation against what God has revealed is something that they cannot defend.
So, like, if they were to say, well, my foundation for knowledge and reason is like the laws of logic, that's not going to work because
That is pathetic. The laws of logic are abstract. Okay. Notice I didn't say fiction. Abstractions do not stand in causal relations. Okay. The number 2 is an abstraction. The number 2 doesn't cause anything. The law of non-contradiction, the law of non-contradiction, we could describe it as follows. One way of saying, for all discrete states, that in a given time index, the discrete state, whatever it is, equals itself in a time index and cannot equal or coexist with its denial or negation. Okay. But then they will universalize that to all discrete states. Okay. So then the fact that a discrete state cannot equal its negation, it doesn't cause anything else. It doesn't implement the foundational parameters of existence which are necessary in order to have human reason, truth, and intelligibility.
And like only the Christian God would have these properties that could be a reliable foundation.
That's right. And somebody says, well, what's the argument for that? I said, well, we can know it because he revealed it. And they'll just say that's begging the question. Well, then so be it. Okay.
So you're fine with question begging arguments?
No, what I'm saying is because of the epistemic condition that all we human beings are and the category that God is in, there are certain things about the totality of all things that we can only know fundamentally, revelationally, and apart from which you can't.
Is that something there's a now
Are you
connection with the argument?
Piper? Are you Piper from Clubhouse?
Yeah. What's up?
Okay, so what are you doing here? You have a history of trolling. Are you here to troll again?
I've never trolled you, Darth.
Okay, if you lie one more time, I will kick you out. You certainly did. You resorted to being argumentative and belligerent with me
Yeah, I
on multiple
disagree with
occasions.
you.
No, sir, stop lying. Okay, this is what I can't stand. You know, you want to lie about your previous contract. No, you were belligerent and you were argumentative, okay, on Clubhouse. You're lying again. Okay? Typically young punks like you do this because you have no consequences and you just lie through your teeth. You know it's true and I know it's true. You just think you're gonna fool
Are you
everybody in
saying all
here.
this so you don't have to engage with the
Okay,
substance of
have
what
a
I'm
nice
asking?
day. You want to lie about your previous bad behavior, you're done. Okay, you're done. When people lie about their own trolling, okay, then I'm done with you. Okay.
Yeah,
This is what these punks do. They just come in here, they're haughty. Okay. I'm not afraid. Look, I went up against Graham Oppie. You think I'm afraid of you when I go up against Graham Oppie?
I was there when you were asking him questions, and then like you cornered him, I think, and he just started spurging out.
Yeah,
He didn't really.
he wanted to advocate naturalism and that God and the natural world was an extraordinary claim, and naturalism was just a given. I said, how is naturalism or natural world even coherent? How do you have unity out of diversity? He couldn't explain it. His brilliant answer was, I see books on my shelf. This is Graham. Look, Graham Oppie is not a stupid man. He's vastly more intelligent than I am, hands down. Okay. Vastly more educated, but that doesn't mean that his rationale for atheism holds up upon examination. To show you that I'm not a hard-hearted man, are you going to admit it that on Clubhouse that you went into trolling mode a number of times with me? You going to admit it?
Why would I admit something I didn't
Okay,
do?
goodbye. Okay. And guess what? Now you're locked out of here. He's now locked out of here.
Bye-bye.
One thing I can't stomach is when somebody chronically is belligerent, argumentative, and then they lie about it. I can certainly tell the difference between somebody who vigorously debates and disagrees with me and some young, teenage or 20-something punk who's just argumentative, pretending to debate. And by the way, this isn't the first time that he's lied about, confronting him that he has previously trolled on Clubhouse. And then they want to play this little game. Oh, I'm accusing them of trolling because I'm afraid of their intellectual prowess. Yeah, right.
I'm pretty sure he's a
Oh,
fanboy of one of your stalkers.
probably.
Wait, so
Look,
what was Graham Oppie's argument for the unity among diversity?
he just simply stated that he could see books on his bookshelf. That didn't metaphysically look. He's an analytic philosopher. Analytic philosophers don't like these kinds of questions. There is no answer as to what, apart from God, instantiates ontologically unity among diversity. There's nothing that you can ground. Right? They just simply adopt unity among diversity as it's just a given. It just is as a brute fact.
There was this one guy you debated in 2020. I don't remember his name, but he kept telling you that it was reality, and He kept
Yeah,
like going in circles with
that's
you. I don't
that
know if you
sounds
remember
like
that.
fake it till you make it, Tom Jump.
I think so. I don't remember.
Yeah, well, reality is no answer at all. When they don't know what to say, they say reality, because saying reality is just like saying, well, everything. So probably what you're thinking of is I asked them, since they reject belief in God is rational, and God is not the creator and sustainer of all temporal states, then what is it then that dictates what each temporal state is, can be, or cannot be? They don't. They know they can't answer it, so they have to lie. So they say things like reality, or they'll say something really stupid like um, fluctuating quantum energy. Right? You laugh. They say this.
I know. That's why it's funny.
You know, when I spoke with Lawrence Krauss, he was bragging in the beginning of his AMA. We don't need God. We can explain everything through laws of nature. And I'm quoting him verbatim. Well, when it was my turn, I said, well, Dr. Krauss, what is it that dictates all instances in terms of what is, can be, and cannot be? And he got pissed because he knew he got his bluff was called. He goes, I don't know. Why does it even matter?
That guy's a
And
moron.
at that, no, don't listen. Please don't say that, because as much as I don't like him, he's not a moron. He's a highly intelligent man. Okay. I don't care
Okay.
for him. I think he debates very poorly as an atheist. I mean, look, we're all fair game for criticism, including myself, but don't say he's not a moron. Okay.
Well, this is Atheist Helpline. Unless there's any atheists here that wants something addressed right now, I'd like to ask you a question, Darth.
Sure, most atheists, they're just cowards because they realize that if they just invoke the usual atheist cliches, they're just going to get incinerated. Not personally, but the cliche will get incinerated.
Okay. Do you believe in the resurrection?
You mean in the resurrection of Jesus?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of times when I'm engaging in a bit of apologetics, we'll get to the factual issues, not so much the logical ones. Did the resurrection actually occur? And everyone always, and I hear this all the time, I'm sure everyone here has heard it. Extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence. And I think this is just a kind of a cop out. It's a way to raise the standard of evidence to something that is unattainable. Because when I ask, well, what kind of evidence would exist that confirms this happened, that would rise to that level? Can't really answer the question. What else could there be besides testimony that it occurred?
Look, this is another cliche. You know, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Okay. Okay. Um, the resurrection of Jesus Christ is not an ordinary event, but we don't require extraordinary rationales for it. All we need are ordinary rationales that there's a sufficient number of eyewitnesses, and that the background information is such that it provides an indispensable model of reality from which you cannot do without. Okay.
Okay.
So when you hear those atheists who like to invoke the spirit of Christopher Hitchens, this is just another form of a cliche. Now, if they might want to go the route like Pine Sleaze does, you can find him on YouTube. He goes by the name Pine Creek, where he just makes it, just saying, well, what if I just told you my cousin, was buried, we buried him and he rose again from the dead? You wouldn't believe that either, right? But you see, this is a false analogy. Okay. Because the resurrection of Jesus is not just claiming that, a dead Jew came back to life. It comes with a composite model of reality that comes with it. Your cousin rising from the dead doesn't. Okay.
What do you mean by the composite model of reality?
In other words, the resurrection of Jesus Christ isn't just about a dead Jew coming back to life. It's that this Jew who was killed was professing to be the Son of God. There were accounts of him doing miracles, that he was the Messiah, the Savior of the world, and the second person of the Trinity, and that his death, burial, and resurrection was a part of the redemption plan of human history. And there's more to it than that. That's not an analogy to his Uncle Buck rising from the dead after he died in a car accident. It's not the same type of historical claim. So what atheists do is they make false analogies. Okay. So the
Yeah.
resurrection of Jesus Christ cannot be disconnected and disassociated from the composite message of the Christian worldview, which is a comprehensive worldview, whether you agree that it's real or not. And it's a complete worldview, whereas your Uncle Buck rising from the dead is not a complete worldview.
Okay. Well, yeah, I usually say, okay, that's a pretty good one. I usually say, well, if several people corroborate and affirm they saw your Uncle Buck rise from the dead, and they affirm this belief on the penalty of death, then I would consider that.
Look, we also have to take into consideration that those who are raising objections, that they're not neutral bystanders, that they have an axe to grind against their creator, and in fact, their creator possibly manifesting himself through creation and human history in the case of Jesus Christ. Whereas me objecting to their Uncle Buck, my not believing it, um, you would be hard pressed to make a case that I was psychologically deceiving myself about that. Okay, where we can make a very compelling case that those who reject the resurrection of Jesus Christ, allegedly on historical grounds, don't want it to be true because they want to preserve and protect their false belief that they're autonomous. Okay,
Yeah, it'd be
we
very
could,
inconvenient for a lot of people, I
yeah,
imagine.
we can methodically show that those who reject the God world and the self-identity claims of Jesus Christ, we can step by step show that they're doing so to preserve and protect their false belief that they're autonomous, because their only alternative is to say that they're being completely arbitrary in terms of their criterion of belief.
Well, yes, and I agree with that, because I often point out, right, when you look at the Gospels and where it says Jesus did mundane things, like, oh, he was in Galilee and he said some stuff, and he was in this place and he said that, and he ate some fish here. They believe it, right? In those cases, these are reliable historical documents. But where they purport miracles, they must be lying, or it's insufficient evidence.
Well, the point is this: miracles per se, we can all have a reasonable amount of incredulity for, but the miracles that we have are conjoined with a specific person with a specific message, which is a completely unique and comprehensive worldview. Whereas some miracle claim in some other time of history or geographical location, it's not necessarily conjoined with a composite worldview. Okay. Now, in some rare instances, it might, but it typically is not. So again, what we have is the responses, what you brought up, are there. These are just atheist talking points. They're not. They don't hold up upon careful scrutiny, and they don't pass the smell test for somebody suppressing the truth and unrighteousness. Okay, look, let's take somebody who does this kind of shtick, Pine Sleaze, aka Pine Creek, on YouTube. I encountered him twice on YouTube in a live thing where he was unexpected, and he was unprepared and he did poorly. When he did one of his live broadcasts where he usually does his shtick, okay, and I call it shtick because it's more sarcasm and comedy than it is rigorous philosophical examination. When he had a call-in show and nobody was calling in, so I called in. And when I announced, or he realized that it was me, he refused to have an actual mano-a-mano adult interaction. He just turned it into a comic routine where he kept on muting me, and then later on when he uploaded it, he added a laugh track to it. And this is a guy who claims that his approach to not accepting biblical Christianity and the existence of God is philosophically oriented. It's not.
Well,
What's he so afraid of Darth Dawkins when I call in, when he has the complete powers of the mute, right? What's he afraid of? Well, he's afraid of. And then one time he goes, "Oh, well, tell me about Jesus." And I said, "Well, we can get to that, but what we want to discuss is the validity of your unbelief first of all about God." Because this was simply a verbal smokescreen so that he could avoid biblical presuppositional questions about his worldview. Because there was nothing new that I was going to tell him about Jesus Christ that he didn't already know. So this was a type of evasion and deception on his part. So he didn't have to answer the biblical presuppositional questions, which he failed in the first two encounters I had with him. Look, this is typical. Whether it's some high school student or some atheist philosopher, they all are engaging in some type of deception or obfuscation or prevarication or just throwing out atheist cliches, sometimes dressing them up in philosophical lingo, but they all come down to the same half-baked slogans and cliches that teenagers present. This is why I personally am fearless when it comes to these people, because I know that their half-baked ideas and rhetoric cannot stand against the revelation of God. It's impossible for them to do it. This is why they troll. This is why they lie. No, it's comparable to politics in the United States with the Democrats fighting against the Republicans. Not that there's any perfect party, but the Democratic Party is vastly more evil, and they constantly are engaging in lying in order to pursue their political agenda. Rather than to transparently defend their positions against the opposite parties. Well, do we have any unbelievers who would like to explain to us why your unbelief is reasonable? Love to hear it. Oh, Boris, glad you're here. Somebody said recently in the room a short while ago that you had stated that atheism is the default position. Would you like to explain that?
Yeah, P. Mars said that, Boris.
Yeah, I know.
Would you like to explain that? Would you like to explain that?
Yeah, he didn't like that, I guess. Yeah,
How is atheism the default position?
Unbelief is the default position.
Okay, so the not God world is the default position. How so?
Well, unbelief of anything is a default position.
No. We're not just talking about some vague thing here. We're talking about the God world versus the not God world. Your position is the not God world is the default position, right?
Well, I don't know if there's a not God world.
Okay, so
But
now
unbelief.
so now you're claiming that you're neutral.
Yeah, because as you know, I don't understand the God concept.
Are you going to do that shtick again? That lie?
Wow,
I already explained to you the God concept. God is that
I
which is
know,
eternal. Okay, this is what he goes to because he can't defend his atheism. He has to go to his shtick that he doesn't understand what the word God means. and that's a lie. Okay, you know what a mind is, right?
Say that.
You know what a mind is, Boris?
Not really.
Okay, all right, get out of here. Okay, please leave before I lock you out. Okay, at least this way, if I
Alrighty.
don't lock you out, you can come back. What you see? What a pathological liar this guy is. How disgusting.
Yeah, that was just a flat out lie.
By the way, I personally do not dislike Boris. Okay, he and I have gotten along fine when we talk about an array of other topics. So I don't have a personal animosity toward him in general. But when he lies, you know, that gets my feathers up. Okay. He's absolutely lying. He's lied about other things too. Like one time on a Discord server, um, he said something. We directly quoted him verbatim, and then he said he didn't say that. We had somebody in the room that was recording it, and that individual grabbed the recording and played it back within about 60 seconds. Boris accused him of editing the audio to make it sound like he said that all within 60 seconds. Okay? So that's Boris. So you see, Boris doesn't think that and look, Boris is not a stupid guy, okay? Not in the least, right? But Boris's shtick is because he can't defend that God doesn't exist. He has to go the route of atheism or theological non-cognitivism. Like, I don't know what God means. And, you know, I've explained to him before that God is a concept of that which is eternal. It is a mind. And this eternal mind is the source and basis of why there is anything that begins to exist, such as temporal objects. Now, whether you believe that's actual or not is besides the point, but that's an intelligent, intelligible representation that one can comprehend. And yet he wants to continue to maintain he can't understand what that is. So you'll notice that he outright lied right before he left when he says he doesn't know what a mind is. Now, is there anyone in this room who believes he was telling the truth when he says he doesn't know what a mind is? If you know what a temporal mind is, then it's easy to conceive of an eternal mind. The only difference is the eternal mind doesn't begin to exist. It just simply exists without beginning. Do you think, and I've discussed this with Boris before, that the word eternal versus temporal are intelligible concepts? Whether or not you agree that something is eternal, they're certainly intelligible concepts. But then again, the atheists and the theological non-cognitivists, because they lack the confidence in their own intellect to defend the non-existence of God, they play this little shtick. I don't know what the word God means. All right, we got another person. Goodbye, Giggler. Hit the road, Jack. Another long-standing troll.
So happy you're back on Discord.
Okay, yeah, you're getting removed.
I don't think it worked, Darth.
think it worked now. He's gone. He's a total scumbag. Look, there's a guy on here. One example. Trying to remember how to say his name. Giansana or something like that. I've debated with him on dozens and dozens of occasions, and he vigorously disagrees and opposes me. But there's never been an instance when he trolls. Okay, that's why he's always welcome to vigorously oppose, what I believe and debate for, because he doesn't troll. He's very frustrating, but he doesn't troll. You troll me one too many times, boom, you're on my ban list. Yeah. They just don't like what I do because I expose how bankrupt their position is. They don't like that. Scammers don't like somebody who exposes their scam.
Darth, have you been playing with Chat GPT at all?
A little bit, but I've been using more of the Bing.
Oh, do you like that
AI.
one better?
I like it a little better. I was a little bit turned off when I asked Chat GPT a question about a graphics card, the NVIDIA RTX 4090 card, which came out, I think, in October. I asked it a question about it, and it said the card doesn't exist.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's because it's only updated to 2001.
No, I'm not trying to disparage
No. That's what
GPT,
I did the same thing. When you ask it new things like
I think that the AI has a certain utility, but people need to understand that in spite of the brilliance and the utility of that kind of AI, it's just, and I'll use the word trolling. I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just collecting data off the internet, and then through its AI, it's putting together grammatical an answer as if a human being spent a lot of time to cull this information and then organize it, in a systemized and grammatical way. It doesn't ensure the accuracy of what is being put forth. I mean, it can be accurate on numerous occasions, but it's only as good as the information that it's culling off of the internet.
Yeah, I love it. I ask it all sorts of questions.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. It really is. But I think people need to have a balanced approach that it's an amazing technological advance, but at the same time, we have to recognize its limitations, that it's prone to errors, just like searching the internet is prone to getting errors.
Oh, yeah.
Like somebody sent me a message and they said, who was Darth Dawkins? And all it simply did is it culled some sites where people were slandering me and then just repeated, the slander, so how accurate is that?
I mean, Darth, you should like if they asked ChatGPT about me, nothing would come up. I'm surprised even something comes up. Like that's crazy.
Well, that's because people aren't fetishizing over you to the
Yeah.
extent that they are with me. Although there are some people that are starting to become that way with you.
Yeah, you notice I just say, you know what, it's been fun here, but I gotta go. You know. Plus, Andrew is so I can't take it. Like all he
Are you
does
talking
is
about Andrew R? He look,
yeah.
the guy is an idiot. I just looked. He had a stage on Clubhouse recently, and I looked at the people on stage, and he has been informed as to how they're violating the terms of service, engaging in slander, defamation, stalking, etc. He doesn't care. He does same thing with Johnny Hawes. He does not care. Okay, that's why I call them apologetic whores and prostitutes.
He gets attention from them, and then he says he thinks that Jack Angstrike is smart, which is, I mean, I guess he
Oh,
could
how
say
dumb can
I
you
guess he
be?
could hit a bullseye sometimes, you know, but
He wouldn't be saying that if he was cognizant of the the amount of sophistry that comes out of Jack's mouth. Okay. Look, Jack has no defensible worldview out of which he spews his philosophy. Have you ever heard Jack
it's not
give a
even
defense of it?
philosophy. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
to be honest, once he starts, if he ever starts talking, like I'm never there long enough for me to want to just wait until he
Try this
speaks.
experiment. Try this experiment.
It's
Just
gonna be
go in there and just ask him, can you please lay out your worldview?
well, we don't communicate
Well,
like that.
do you think do you think he's going to expound on his worldview? There's none to expound upon.
Yeah, I don't even know what I would talk to him about.
Darth, can I ask you a
I
question
guess I'm
about
shy, but
your method?
what
Yeah,
happened?
go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so I have a question about your method. Like, when you ask people for their worldview, that kind of presupposes that, like, they have some principles behind that worldview that makes it right preferable to others. So, in your mindset, what
Well,
makes one worldview preferable to another?
they do have it. Even children have a worldview,
So, a
right?
worldview to you is not necessarily like a human construct, but like it could be more natural than that.
Your worldview is going to be your set of interconnected and interrelated beliefs that are in some way unified either by something concrete or the unification will be on a more abstract level. Now, even children have such a worldview. So, for example, children have a set of beliefs, and that their beliefs have some type of relationship to other beliefs, and that there's something unifying the world. There's something making certain things the same and certain things not the same. Do you think that even little children who are old enough to articulate it think that things that repeat themselves in their world, that it just happens spontaneously for no reason? Or do they believe that, well, there's something keeping the tree in existence from yesterday to today, right?
Yeah.
The child doesn't believe that the tree disappeared at night and then it pops into existence 30 seconds before they wake up and it just looks like the same tree. They believe that there's something, whether it's God or something else, that is making the continuity real amongst discontinuity, or meaning irregularities. Because if everything were regular and nothing would change, then you couldn't even think. So our world is a mixture of regularity and irregularity, continuity and discontinuity, and children recognize these basic concepts. So
It
either
sounds like
there's
you're saying.
yeah, go ahead.
It sounds like you're saying, where there's a picture, there was a reflection, right? So there's there's relationships between things, and
Yeah,
that all fits together into one big whole
children
picture.
believe that certain things that they see are real, unless they have a reason to believe it's a misapprehension. So what I'm saying to you is, even little children have a crude or rudimentary worldview. Everyone has one, right? But a lot of these miscreants on the internet, uh, they're just sophists. They don't want to really defend their worldview because they can't.
That's kind of what I'm asking you about. Do you think there is any way they could defend their worldview, and if so,
No.
what principles would they need to show?
Look. There is no neutral position. And since there's no neutral position, and I hold to the Christian worldview and the ultimacy of the God of the Bible, the God of the Bible is what ordains and institutes what is, can be, and cannot be. And therefore, the only way that I can exist, move and breathe and think and reason is because I'm creaturely. And so, in order for me to breathe is ultimately because of God, his creation, and his plan. And in order for me to know that I have 5 fingers on my left hand is because of God's creation and his plan. So, all things, including knowledge, are rooted in God's nature, character, and his revelatory actions. So even as the Bible is a revelation of the mind and purpose and plan of God, me looking at the moon shining on a cloud-free night is also a revelation of God. So that when an unbeliever claims that they can give an explanation that is incompatible and inconsistent with what God has revealed within my worldview, it's incumbent upon me to be consistent that that's an impossibility for them to do.
So, but do you hold them to your own worldview then when you inquire about theirs? And if so, how do you do that?
I'm always doing that either explicitly or implicitly.
But if
That the
so, how do you do that if you're just assuming you're correct? Because you're saying it's
I'm not merely assuming that it is correct. I am adopting the Christian worldview because compositely it verifies itself. Okay, and I can expound on that if you want. Okay, so it's not a mere assumption. I realize that the central characteristics, the fundamental parameters that are expressed within the Christian worldview, are parameters that I cannot do without. Because if I were, then there wouldn't be any basis for reason, truth, or intelligibility. So, in other words, the fundamental parameters are God, and him being the creator and Lord over that creation, and that he's imposed certain regularities, he's made them real, he sustains that they're real, and because those parameters exist because of his creation, I can think, move, and breathe, and reason, and come to know things. When they come along and they say no God needed, I'm calling their bluff. It's like a poker game. Show me your cards. You got nothing. Okay. Did you ever see the movie Cool Hand Luke?
No.
Okay, it's one of Paul Newman's famous movies. I'd recommend you watch it. It's a great movie. And in the movie, they're playing poker in the prison bunk. And he defeats everybody, and he takes a pile full of $1 bills. He defeats everybody. And at the end, they turn over his cards. He had nothing. He was bluffing. And they said, "You had nothing." And he goes, "Well, sometimes nothing is a real cool hand." Well, that's what the atheists are doing. They're bluffing. They got nothing. And I know it. And they know it. But you see, when you approach them the way ordinary Christian debaters do, they pretend like we're on neutral ground. We're not on neutral ground. Okay? In a God world where God has the characteristics of the Christian God, there can be intelligible, defensible grounds as to human truth, reason, and intelligibility. In a not God world, there's nothing identifiable or defensible as to what makes anything tick. That's why when you ask some of these people, since you don't believe God is creator and Lord, What is it that dictates what is, can be, and cannot be? And you get colossally stupid answers like reality or energy or the universe. They say these dumb things because they don't know what else to say.
Well, when I identified as an atheist, I saw what you're saying, like the idea that there's something that necessarily must be an ultimate, like uncaused cause, what have you. But I didn't know, like the question I was asking is what is that, instead of, I didn't think about it being God.
Okay, well
So
the first thing you want to say, you're identifying the eternal. Okay? You start with that. That which is eternal is the basis of the temporal. Okay? And you realize unless you acknowledge that there is something that's eternal that gives rise to the temporal, then the temporal becomes unintelligible. Okay, because then there won't be anything dictating what the temporal is. It just pops into existence from nowhere.
so there must be like an eternal in order for there to be a temporal.
Well, either the tree, as I say, blowing in the wind outside your window, is indicative of the eternal or not. If it is indicative of the eternal, then the temporality of the tree has its root in that which is without beginning, the eternal. But it could only be indicative of the eternal if and only if the eternal was an agent and had the sufficient characteristics or attributes in order to purpose and sustain that the tree indicates the eternal. Because if they're going to people who are going to say, well, I think it's indicative of the eternal, but not God. Say, okay, how is something that's eternal purpose that something indicates it? So something that isn't characteristically the rational ordains that something indicates something else. I mean, this is convoluted.
Yeah, it's complex. Yeah.
Even if we were to agree hypothetically, conceptually, that it would be true, how could you defend it? On the other hand, if God is real and he characteristically is the God of the Bible, then we actually have a metaphysical basis by which we can articulate and defend how and why the tree reveals God as creator by his purpose. But you see, if somebody is a rebel against God, doesn't want God to be God, but they want to bitterly cling to their false belief that they are autonomous when they're not, and they know they can't defend that they're autonomous, then they'll just scrounge around and collect for themselves all sorts of pseudo-intellectual, cliches and slogans as to why they need not believe in God. This is what they do. Look, I don't want to say this cavalierly, but once you have a basic grasp philosophically, okay, of what God has revealed, right? It's incredibly empowering because we realize that the wisdom and the revelation of God cannot be defeated by human intellectualization, even by people who are giants philosophically. Let's take Bertrand Russell, for example. Bertrand Russell was a brilliant mathematician and philosopher in the 20th century. Incredibly brilliant. I don't think there's anyone who knows who he was who would say that he wasn't brilliant. But what he was left with as an atheist was giving his teapot analogy, which I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's pathetic. It's a category error.
Yeah, literally.
Okay. And this isn't to disparage Bertrand Russell. If he were alive and I were younger and let's say going to higher education, you'd want to sit and listen to this brilliant guy on a wide range of subjects. Okay. But you shouldn't listen to him when it comes to the existence of God and atheism. But even this brilliant philosopher made an elementary category error when he tried to say that atheism is justified or unbelief is justified by an analogy to the teapot. for those of you who are listening, who don't know what that is, Bertrand Russell said, we disbelieve that God exists in the same way we disbelieve in a teapot orbiting a nearby planet for which we don't have any reason to believe that the teapot is there. It's a category error.
Yeah. The ontological argument kind of like help details this, because the modern forms will basically say that God is logically necessary. So either he's impossible or he's absolutely like necessary in terms of possibility. And based on that, use a metaphysics. We're talking about metaphysics. So like, it's either logically the case, it's like it's logically possible or not, and there's not much in between on that.
Yeah, I
because of
always
his
love it. I always love it when unbelievers say, "Well, God doesn't exist because he's improbable," and it's just like you just want to pound your head on the table. Just like they say such stupid things, right? The probability has to do with background information in terms of what's static and not static or dynamic. So what's the background information in order to say that God is improbable? I mean, it's just dumb. So basically what I'm doing with these people is I'm destroying their atheist cliches and slogans by devising questions that are grounded in what God has revealed about himself. So if God reveals X, Y, and Z about himself, and this is undeniable and irrefutable, if an atheist invokes a cliche or slogan, whatever it is, that is incompatible with that, I know from the get-go that they can't defend that. Right?
Well, what would you say if they said, "Well, it's just your presupposition versus mine"?
That's
Can you
just
argue that
that
you
that
need
that's
to
that's
presuppose
a
God in order to get to their worldview?
that's a cliched response, and they're also misrepresenting how I would be appropriating or using the word presupposition. Okay, they're using the word presupposition there as simply a mere metaphysical assumption. Okay, so my fundamental presupposition of all temporal states is the eternal God. But that doesn't mean that it's just I'm just merely adopting it just to make sense of the world. I can only, as a logical, rational human being, I can only logically and rational accept and invoke that God is if and only if God takes the initiative to reveal himself in creation and to reveal himself in a way that is undeniable and irrefutable, in spite of the fact that human beings will make a failed attempt to suppress the truth and unrighteousness that God has not revealed himself in an undeniable and irrefutable way. Okay? I don't want to try to overly complicate that, but that characterizes my position, right?
Well, I
So
think I know what you mean. Yeah.
so when they say it's a mere presupposition, they're actually making a counterclaim that the God of the Bible is not instantiated because he has not, in fact, revealed himself in creation through human history in an undeniable way. So they're making a counterclaim when they hide behind the words, well, you're just presupposing God and I'm not. Okay.
I would
So
I would like
yeah.
to be able to show different ways that basically people have to um, presuppose God in some way, even for their worldview to be slightly correct. Like that, for me, that would be the ideal argument.
Look, they know deep down that if not for God, then everything is pointless. Because there never will be a unified theory. Okay. In order to have a unified theory, you're going to have to identify what is singularly concrete and that is ultimate. How are you going to do that as a human being? You couldn't. Look what just do you think Copernicus and Galileo's mind would be blown? You know, like Doc Brown in Back to the Future, when he was told how much electricity had to be conducted for the time traveling car. Do you think Copernicus' mind would have been blown if he knew what the Hubble space telescope could see, let alone the James Webb Space Telescope? Now, just imagine, the more we get more technologically advanced, the the complexity and the size of the universe grows by orders of magnitude. Well, what if it's the case that what we're on the cutting edge of discovering, it pales in comparison to what the nature of reality is? How is finite man ever going to come to a universal declaration that secures and can instantiate what is ultimate if it's not God? And where God takes the initiative to reveal himself as ultimate. It's a hopeless endeavor. They are maintaining a position that violates the very central criterion of belief that they use to dismiss God. They violate that criterion when they embrace their not God world behind slogans and cliches that don't hold up. All right, I'll be back in a second.
Okay.
Folks show.
I'm just disappointed that we just don't have more intelligent, mature-minded unbelievers to deal with. You know, it's just they're so few and far between. Were any of you in here when Boris was in here, where he said he just didn't understand what the word God meant? I mean, what a liar!
That was Bart.
No, that Boris.
Okay.
Yeah, Boris, who I've had dozens of interactions with, and I don't actually personally dislike, but he just continues to lie about that issue. All right, I'll be back.
Faisal, yeah, are you there?
How do you know that?
Because I think.
Can you give me an infinite amount of premises that would deductively conclude what you just said?
Awareness.
So is that premise one?
That's all the premises in premise one.
Well, thanks for watching, folks. I hope you all enjoyed. Let's get this all the way to the top. Let me unlock. Yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. There'll be more videos in the future. So, and streams. So, whoever's here, 4 viewers, whenever Darth comes back, I'll stream him. It's on the religion and politics server. So, hopefully my mic's coming in good. I never really tested it, but I got stuff to deal with in real life, and he's done talking. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed the stream. It was like 2 hours long. So,